Okay, so we gave a couple minutes for everybody to sign on, and it's okay if others join us a little bit later. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining our discussion today about stewards of the land and water. My name is Ayana Melvan, and I work at Mashantucket Aquarium as the Senior Director for Strategic Partnerships for our mission programs. And I'm really excited to be here today with my panelists. Our panel is going to talk about the authentic partnerships that we have between aquariums and indigenous communities. And we really are going to just kind of walk through how important listening is, whether it's listening on the science end or it's listening on the traditional ecological knowledge that we know that our indigenous tribes have had for generations. And so I'm very lucky today to have some wonderful people on the call to talk through some of the relationship building, the successes, and talk about 30 by 30 and how this can be connected to that work as well. So to start us off, I'm going to have Silver Moon introduce herself.
Asqui Kwasanumis, Natasui Silver Moon LaRose, Nina Narragansett Kanayantik. Nina Assistant Director, Katamaquah Museum. Hello, my name is Silver Moon LaRose, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Tamaquah Museum. I'm also a member of the Narragansett Tribe and of Eastern Niantic descent as well. My relationship with Mystic has been as a community member, bringing tribal youth to programming that we've done collaboratively with the Mystic Aquarium, and being able to be a part of the cultural exchange with Alaskan Native youth. So that's why I'm here. Kanupiam, welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Silver Moon, and we're so happy that you're here. My screen switched a little bit, so Candy, you're next.
Wikisak Natasuis Candace Testa, Niwonkwasi Anuak Natai Mashantucket. Good day, I'm called Candace Testa. I'm of the Fox people, and I live in the place of the great trees. We call it Mashantucket. And I work in the cultural department as a language instructor, a cultural instructor, and I received my master's in cultural sustainability. I consider myself to be a bit of a cultural activist to work towards decolonizing our perspective, our identity, our connection to place.
Thank you so much, Candy. So happy that you're here with us today. Dr. Tracy Romano, you're next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Romano. I'm the chief scientist at Mystic Aquarium. I've been there since 2004. My research specializes in belugas, and ever since the early 90s, I've had the privilege of working with an Inupiat village on the north slope of Alaska to really study beluga whales. And out of that grew a cultural exchange educational program that we developed at Mystic Aquarium as well as in the village, where we educate and get kids excited about science. And we'll talk more about that, but it's been a privilege to work on that with Silver Moon and Candy for many years.
Thank you so much, and we're super happy that you're here today with us, Tracy. Katie, you're next in my windows.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Katie Kubina. I'm the Senior Vice President for Mission Programs and Acting CEO right now. And I oversee conservation, education, research, exhibits, and our ocean policy portfolio. And I've been there for about 16 years. I've worked with Ayana for about a decade and was eager to bring her on board so that we could work more intentionally with lower income and BIPOC communities.
Thank you so much, Katie. And I'm glad that you're able to tune in from Washington, D.C. as we celebrate World Ocean Days and World Ocean Week. So last but not least is Sam.
Asqui Kwasin, Nutasui Samantha. I am of the Narragansett Indian Tribe, and I work at Tamaquah Museum. I run a program called the Indigenous Empowerment Program, which will be Indigenous Empowerment Center. And so I just came to this work lately with the youth, working with Mystic Aquarium. So I'm very excited to be here and share some of that.
Thanks so much, Sam, and we're so happy that you're here today. So I just want to do a land acknowledgement. We think it's important to acknowledge the land, the ancestral lands that we occupy and that we are on today, and that would be Mashantucket Pequot, Mohegan, East Niantic, and Narragansett. And again, I want to thank all the folks that are on here today, and how I do land acknowledgements, and I believe there's a chat. If not, we can throw it up in the resources. There is a wonderful link called native-land.ca, and you can go to that to see some of the land acknowledgement on there. It doesn't have all, but it has most. So that is the resource that I use. So today we're going to start off with kind of connecting this conversation to 30 by 30, and I'm going to throw it over to Katie to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll start off with our first question for our panel.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us here today. So as Ayana mentioned, I'm here in Washington, D.C. for Capitol Hill Ocean Week, which is put on by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. We're joining together on World Ocean Day, and there's been some exciting announcements made this week, some even today, including the intent in the registry to designate Hudson Canyon as a National Marine Sanctuary. We've been working in collaboration with New York Aquarium on this, given our expertise and our influence in designating the first marine national monument in the U.S. Atlantic, which is the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument in 2016. But there's also some really other exciting things going on with sanctuaries, including the intent to nominate the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, which is the first sanctuary that was a tribal nomination. And then just announced yesterday, the Aleut community of St. Paul, Alaska, there's an intent to co-manage, the first co-managed National Marine Sanctuary with a tribal entity. So I see an evolution here that I think is really exciting, and it is articulated in the Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiative, which both inspires the nation to achieve the global objective of conserving at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. And also really emphasizes the need to work collaboratively with Indigenous communities and with other communities on locally led voluntary conservation efforts. What I will say, though, is some of the lessons that have been learned to date is that these efforts need to be resourced. Otherwise, you have people scrambling to volunteer their time to collaborate in these very worthy efforts. So, but I think that there's exciting things on the horizon, and we've had the pleasure of having some robust collaborative partnerships, which we have the opportunity to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Always very exciting. So we're gonna to hear the efforts and to hear about new places that we're designating. So the first question I'm gonna throw over to Candy, and Tracy can jump in to fill in, and others on the panel, please feel free as well. And the first question is, what lessons did you learn about intersectionality of science and traditional ecology knowledge? And can you describe challenges and our successful moments?
Yes, well, going to Point Lay with Tracy Romano and being with the people at Point Lay, it was a beautiful experience because I got to see, science and traditional knowledge working very well together. To see how the amount of mutual respect going back and forth between the elders at Point Lay, the way they greeted us when we got off the airplane. They invited us to their tribal meetings, and the way that they presented issues within the community, and by community, I mean like the natural world. So the caribou and the seals and the whales. So everything that they were noticing in their natural world and sharing it with the scientists, and looking for their input, but also sharing their own traditional knowledge as well. I thought was a good model because everybody went in with an open mind. And there are times when I I'm in meetings and there's condescension, and that wasn't present. It wasn't in the room, which was beautiful. And if you don't mind, I took lots of notes and journal entries when I was in Point Lay, and there's just one experience I wanted to read. It said, daily we got to hear information over the radio about beluga whales when beluga whales were spotted. There was a hum of excitement running through all of us when we would hear that there was a pod of 100, 5 miles north. We made sure our gear was ready, and talk of dinner was full of reminders about who was going to be tasked with what when the whales were brought to the lagoon and onto the beach. We were able to experience the lull that occurs between sightings, along with the sense of hopelessness and facing the reality that we may not be able to participate in the hunt after all. In hindsight, I see how selfish this feeling was, when the real concern should have been for the people and their ability to acquire food for the year. This became apparent during the tribal meeting when someone voiced concern over the fact that they had not caught any whales yet. This, coupled with discussions about health and populations of the bearded seals, the walruses, the caribou, led one man to say that he was not looking forward to only eating food from the local store this winter. So it made it very apparent how closely tied the people still are to the land, and to be able to exist in that space for the short time that I was there was quite growth giving.
I love that. Love that. Especially that deep connection to understanding where our food is coming from, and then how do we get back to the land and protect that land. Thank you so much. Dr. Romano?
The science and the traditional knowledge go hand in hand. We wouldn't know everything we know about belugas without the traditional knowledge. And I feel so fortunate to learn from the people of Point Lay. And we've just learned so much. And it's a collaboration. It's listening to what they feel or what questions they have about the belugas and how science can help answer those questions. It's very much a partnership. You know, the Arctic is ground zero for climate change. And really the effect is apparent up there. They live it every day. They've been able to share with us the changes that they've seen due to climate change, with some of the changes in animal migrations, in erosion of the coastline. The permafrost is melting. They're no longer able to have their ice cellars in the permafrost. The last time I was there, there was an electric freezer plugged in outside, which was just sad to see. So we're constantly learning from traditional knowledge, and we're just so grateful for that partnership. And I feel it's been a privilege and an honor all these years to be able to go to Point Lay and to learn from the people and to work side by side with them to learn all we can about belugas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Romano and Candy. I think you bring up really great points, especially that hand-in-hand traditional and science that has to work together, especially because of these places that are ground zero, as you mentioned, for climate change. And so the next question goes to Silver and Moon and Katie. And that talks about, why is conservation and environmental stewardship so important to the work that you're currently involved in, and how have past relationships helped?
So conservation has always been near and dear to my heart. I serve as the secretary for the Conservation Commission for my town, but I'm also one of the cultural educators here at the museum. I teach traditional ecological knowledge. It's something that I grew up learning, and I pass that knowledge on. And one of the things when I talk about conservation, is the way Western conservation looks at protecting and preserving. They're protecting natural resources for its own sake. You kind of leave nature alone and let it do its thing. We want to preserve it in the way it was meant to be. But from an Indigenous perspective, our very identity is tied to it. So we preserve and protect because we want to make sure those resources are always available to us for the continuation of our lifeways. Our goal in sharing traditional ecological knowledge with others outside of our communities is to foster a relationship between people and our plant and animal relatives. When you build a relationship where it has deep meaning to you, you're more likely to protect and conserve and care for it. The ability to collaborate with others, that's essential. It's essential to the care and conservation of Mother Earth. It's essential to the continuation of our cultural lifeways. We have heard the term water is life being tossed around familiarly now because of things happening all across Turtle Island. But water is literally life to coastal communities. When we had the cultural exchange between Native youth in the Alaskan coast and Native youth coming from Rhode Island and Connecticut, coastal tribes here on complete opposite sides of Turtle Island. But we see those connections within our lifeways. We in the East were also traditional whalers, seal meat and fur, and the oil from that, all of that was a part of our traditional lifeways. And because of colonization, we have been cut off from those resources. Those whaling traditions and sailing traditions haven't been practiced in our community in hundreds of years now because of the disruption to our lifeways and because of the changes to environment that then made these resources no longer available to us. We're not allowed to here. So Native youth from the Pacific coast are able to look at what would happen to us if we were cut off from those traditions and from those lifeways? Where would all of that go? I saw youth from Alaska feeling sick from the foods that we eat here and wishing for the foods that they had back home. And I see Native youth out here who have never had the opportunity to even try those traditional recipes that we haven't had access to in hundreds of years. So protecting and preserving through conservation efforts also preserves us as a people and our traditional lifeways. And we are trying to make sure that everything that we do, how is it going to affect the next 7 generations? 7 generations from this point, our elders, our parents, us, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, what will they all have to remember of who and what they are? So our lifeways are dependent upon a healthy environment, upon having access, upon proper maintenance and stewardship of these gifts of land and water and animals. So we need everyone to be on board. So working with organizations who are committed to that work, places like Mystic Aquarium, whose research is invaluable to us, and being able to partner in a way that they value and respect our need for these resources. They can learn at the same time that we're preserving so that we have that to use.
Thank you so much, Silver Moon, because it touched me a lot, especially the water is life. In Jamaica, where my family's from, that is what we truly believe, that water is life, and that's really crucial to our survival on that island. So thank you so much for sharing. Katie.
Yeah, so thank you, Silver Moon and Ayana. So at Mystic Aquarium, we are way more than just a destination, entertainment destination. And the area that I oversee with so many wonderful colleagues, the mission programs area, our purpose, and really truly the purpose of the aquarium as a whole, is to conserve marine ecosystems and wildlife, activate environmental stewards, and shape sustainable ocean policy. So that's what's important to us. And I would sort of, as far as why is conservation and environmental stewardship important to the work we're involved in, and how is this relationship helped, I would almost flip that on its head and say the relationship helps us approach conservation and environmental stewardship in a way that is respectful and appropriate, and also allows us to learn from the original stewards of our land and water and help lift up and elevate that that lifestyle of sustainability, which I see as a major issue in why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in, is that we've developed these large scale commercial industries to extract natural resources from our planet. And if we could all learn from the more traditional mindset of take only what you need and use everything that you have, and use less and conserve more, then we wouldn't be dealing with these extraordinary crises that we have now as it relates to mass extinction and climate change. So I think we really need to have a complete mind shift, and our partnership with Indigenous communities and our ability to lift up that voice and that message, I believe, will be a tipping point to help us all together as citizens of this planet achieve the goals that we need in order to have our planet and all of us and all of our cultures survive, and more than survive, and thrive.
Thank you for that, Katie. And oh, Sam, I feel like we are so connected all the time because she just segued into something that you and I kind of dug really deep into about how do we create those opportunities for listening about that traditional conservation and preservation that's so important, that Silver Moon you touched on multiple times. And so, Sam, what does listening look like to you, and how have you been heard in this relationship? Really heard?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's funny from an Indigenous perspective to always be traversing two worlds and to have to constantly navigate both, and constantly feel like you're just educating on things that are your life ways. And so at times you feel like we're just in a consumerism, capitalistic void, and like, how do we it feels insurmountable. But then we have opportunities where we're able to have experiences with Mystic and different partnerships that we have. Currently working on a partnership with Dr. Lucy Spellman, who runs a little organization called Creature Conserves, and talking about traditional ecological knowledge in science and how do we approach conservation in a way that is led by the voices of, well, this is specifically Narragansett people, but Indigenous people, but also using the science to our benefit. And I think we often traverse in a world where science is like the thing that we don't do. We don't feel like science is a world where we belong. We don't feel like science is a world that's obtainable. STEM is this big, scary thing, but it isn't completely in what we do and how we live. And so that's always the bridge of the gap that I'm trying to create for our youth. And so I think with the experiences that we've had with the youth, with Mystic, going down to the waterways and being explorers and being in community with one another allows themselves to see themselves as scientists. And the way that it's approached in the work is very much letting them be the ones exploring and telling the story. And it very much looks like them and it sounds like them. And it isn't someone standing there telling them what it is. It's them going, oh yeah, I've been here before. Oh yeah, look at this. You can find this over here. Oh, we eat that. Oh, look at that cool thing. And allowing them to ask the questions of the adults in the space when they want to, but allowing them to also just be naturally a part of the world that they, in a lot of respects, have been removed from. And I think that has been the coolest part for me. And then as an adult, being able to manage and create those partnerships that feel very organic for that age range, whether and youth for us goes, much older than what you might think of, but we think of youth 26 to even sometimes 30 years old, right? So that span of people, because as an adult, it's very hard to feel heard and seen unless folks are coming to you wanting the knowledge. Oftentimes you just feel like you're in rooms that might look like this, speaking into a void. And so it's been very hopeful and interesting to watch the kids have a completely flipped experience.
Yes. Yes, that flipped experience, everybody's been touching on it in this conversation. And I think when we're thinking about that flipped experience, and Sam will have you come back and kind of go into detail, but Silver Moon, I'm going to throw it to you. Why partner with an aquarium?
So I have found that this relationship has been really impactful in our community. If you see something, if you experience something, it creates in you this ability to believe it's possible, or it's attainable, it's approachable. So when we bring youth to the aquarium, and they're not just coming to see all this beautiful marine life, they're learning about careers in marine biology and working in these fields, it opens up a whole world of opportunity for them. And having those connections help to solidify the opportunity to actually, get in the door, because some places can be difficult to get in. As many people want these opportunities. So this has created that open door, having that connection. And I've seen it help some of our tribal youth. We have one who participated in some of the programming that we've done with Mystic, and she's a recent graduate of the University of Rhode Island in Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science, and she'll be moving on to a career working with animals. We have another who is going into her sophomore year at the University of Rhode Island and studying marine biology, and she's working at Bay campus, doing research work already as a sophomore. She actually got to do it as a freshman, which is very rare, but it's because of the opportunities, the knowledge that she already had gained being at Mystic, doing programming with Mystic. It gave her that leg up, and even having references from people at Mystic to speak on her behalf, that's huge. So that relationship in helping to secure opportunity for our youth has been invaluable. But what I also have loved is that the programming that we've done with them has been intergenerational. It hasn't just focused on one particular age group. When they had a program for kids, we had babies to elders that were invited to come along, tag along, stay, watch, listen, participate. Everybody was there, all ages. And that's the way we do things in our community. And so they've created a space where we can learn and engage in the ways that are best for us. And that's been phenomenal. So we're only looking forward to more.
I love that. Yes. That community feeling, the intergenerational, huge on our end too. So as a woman of color, it just feels like that's how I've always learned. So I'm so thankful to Katie that she goes along with it and is like, that makes sense. It's super helpful when you don't have to go down the road of explaining. So Sam, I know you touched a little bit about this, but why partner with an aquarium?
So I think it all ties back to this idea that water is life. And so intrinsically, it's a part of who we are. It's how we have always lived our lives. And more recently, it's one of the resources we're probably most cut off from, not having access. Everything is, the inaccessibility is wildly, and wildly intentionally taken away. Like, it's almost mind blowing. And I just sat for 7 hours trying to get beach access at a beach in the town of Narragansett that holds our people's name. And their concern was 3,000 natives are going to storm the beach. And we're like, we're not coming to sunbathe, right? So there's this completely different shift in ideology that's really hard to bridge that gap. And it's like, this is where we held ceremony. These are our relatives. This is where we have always been. And so for you to just say, now you can't go there, feels very counter to who we are. So having a partnership with a Mystic Aquarium that allows you to bridge those areas, and it gives you the privilege and the rights to get into spaces and see things that maybe normally you would have been able to do and had the skills to do or access to do, but you no longer have. And then it also allows, there's something really beautiful between traditional ecological knowledge, but being able to matriculate in a space like the University of Rhode Island and other spaces for our people to be able to have that background in science and to have a really firm understanding on what it is and how it intersects, I think that's what brings the fullness and the brightness to it. And I watch it at a very early level with my own two girls who have been participatory, who are third and first grade now, but they probably were first in like pre-K when we went. And they already see themselves differently than I did as a kid, and even as they saw themselves as a kid. And they already want to have more opportunities and see themselves as little scientists. And they want more science kits. Now they want to find out, how do I do that? How do I do what they do? Those people in the blue shirts, like, how do I do that? And so the questions start much earlier. The conversations start much earlier than us trying to grab people at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, so on and so forth, or even into their adulthood, who we've kind of almost missed the gap, and you're trying to like add a Band-Aid to a bullet wound, where now we can reach them at a very early age and say, this is a pathway for you. Here's where you can see yourself in this space. It isn't just here, here, and here. It is all of these different career paths. It is all of this different knowledge. And it is this whole entire world that you belong in. And you're not separate from. So I think that's where the power and the partnership comes from.
I love that. And Silver Moon, thank you so much for really emphasizing that access piece to opportunity, like securing that opportunity. And Sam, it like breaks my heart that we at Mystic Aquarium have to give you that free access to the beach. That's ridiculous. Which kind of jumps us into the next question that's, I'm going to give to you, Candy, and a follow-up from Dr. Romano is, how can aquariums and other entities empower locally led conservation and environmental stewardship? And I'm going to add and traditional cultural celebration and events that need to happen on our coastline and with our ocean.
Well, I think aquariums and museums are already including events specifically for the youth. We all see the value in teaching our youth and hoping that there'll be ideals that'll follow them throughout their life, that'll support conservation efforts, but also including our elders. So that intergenerational events that are specific to, grandma and me or grandpa and me, or I think that would be quite powerful, because not only are the youth acquiring wonderful information, but they're doing it with people that are really important to them to really solidify the memory and help us along with our efforts to preserve nature and preserve the waters. And when I say preserve nature, it's like also remembering that we are a part of nature. We talk about nature as it's something separate, external from us, but we are a part of it. And that comes along with the change in our mindset of looking at the ocean as a commodity, as a natural resource, and how would we treat the ocean if we viewed it as something with a spirit, with needs and wants of its own? And, how would you speak to the ocean and ask it what it needs? And I think many of us, we probably know, and many people aren't doing the things daily in your day-to-day life to help the ocean. Every time we purchase things at the store, we're affecting the ocean. So being more conscious of the decisions we make on our day-to-day life, and museums and aquariums do a really good job of educating people on what we can do locally in order to make a positive, work towards positive change.
I've never wrote so fast in my life, Candy. What really touched me there is, how would we treat the ocean if we treated it like it had a spirit? Wow. That's something to think on and reflect on. Dr. Romano.
I think aquariums, and I'm thinking of Mystic Aquarium here, but aquariums in general have so much to offer, and we've seen it firsthand. So when the village on the North Slope of Alaska has supported our research on whales for so many years, we asked the question, what can we do to give back? And without hesitation, the elders replied, educational programs for our youth. And we thought, we can do that. And so that's when we really gathered together and produced a hands-on science program for youth, for high school youth as well as college youth, where the students help us in the field with the whales, but then they come back to the aquarium and they follow the samples back to the aquarium, and they participate hands-on in the lab. They help us spin down the blood from a beluga whale, and they learn about all the cells and what that tells about the health of the animals, or they experience our local marine environment. They learn about careers. And I think why I love what the aquarium does here is because the goal is to empower the students to go on and further their education and bring that back to their communities and be the scientists and wildlife managers for their own communities, and help with the sustainability of those precious natural resources in the future. And I think, you know, Mystic Aquarium, again, is so privileged and honored to be able to share our expertise and what we do and help to pass that on and inspire those students. And we look forward to doing more of that in the future.
Thank you. And I know Katie wants to chime in real quick, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Katie.
Yeah, really just to wrap it up, and then we can do some Q&A. And so I just want to wrap this discussion back to one of the tenets of the America the Beautiful initiative is to increase access to public lands and waters, particularly for communities that historically have had access blocked. And so it's heartbreaking to me to see that struggle with Narragansett Town Beach. But I will say that, you know, we've launched a number of programs at the, you know, at a national wildlife refuge, which is free and, you know, it's publicly accessible. There's no fees. And we have a similar situation with, so that's U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Department of Interior. And we have a similar situation with NOAA in their national marine sanctuaries and also their national estuary research reserves that are open and to the public. So at least at that level, there is an acknowledgement that we need to have these places that are free and publicly available to everybody, but we also have to find ways to bring people to them because sometimes there are other barriers such as transportation. So we're working on that at that level, but it needs to trickle down to the states and the towns, and I think we all need to work together to support that transition and that mind shift. So let me turn it back over to Ayana, and maybe we have time for just a couple of questions.
Thank you, Katie. That's so crucial to focus on that access piece. And thank you, Dr. Romano, for mentioning that crucial piece and critical piece in the relationship of asking each other, right? Like not always having the answer and feeling comfortable to ask, what are your needs? And then also, hey, we have a need as well, I think is so crucial to the relationship piece. And so thank you for bringing that up. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you for all joining us today at the lunch hour. I want to open up the opportunity for the last 5 minutes for anyone that has questions for our panel. And so you can just come off mute and ask a question. And if you don't want to come off mute and ask in the chat, please do so and I'll read it. Anybody have a question? I'm trying to give it the educational break. I've been told 30 seconds. All right, I don't think any, no questions, but thank you so much to everyone for taking the time to speak and educate us. I think this was touched upon lightly, but how do you think larger organizations can contribute to the promotion of TEK in marine sciences or science in general? So I'm assuming TEK means
Traditional
ecology.
ecological knowledge.
Excellent. Not a big fan of, I have to Google acronyms all the time. So who wants to take this one? Anybody from our panel can go.
I can take that one, Ayana, or at least touch upon it. I know that as a scientist, when I'm teaching courses, I always work in the importance of traditional ecological knowledge. And I talk about the relationship between the scientists and the people that live on the land in the community and utilize the marine resources. So I'm always talking about it and the importance of it. I think sometimes in scientists, I think we need more scientists to bring in traditional ecological knowledge into their research. And so whenever I have an opportunity to speak to anyone, I always speak about that. And especially with the students that I work with, I bring, starting at a younger age, really instill that into the importance of doing research and how important it is to include the traditional ecological knowledge.
And I would like to add, yeah, to look at
everybody,
people who are living near you. So who are the communities in your local area? Reach out to them today and ask for their involvement. I think that would be the best way to start.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think the way you promote it is inclusivity. And so as a larger organization, look at where you are and find the Indigenous folks, and don't just have outside conversations, have them actively involved so that when folks are at these larger organizations, they see the Indigenous people and realize that it's not just something you've said in a mission statement or a land acknowledgement, but it's actually something that you're actively doing. And then other people are more apt to do it. And it gives more opportunity for the community as well to be more involved.
And if I can give my last 2 cents, there's a lot of resources out there to support doing that. Even if you're looking to bring that in, and I think it brings in a completely different perspective, what traditional ecological is, and why people like me who have no science background can teach it, is because it's the relationship that we have. It's the knowledge that we have based on those relationships that we've built over generations. And so sometimes when I'm presenting to a group of ecologists and I think, like I'm talking to people who already know, they don't know what I know. They don't know the connections that we have. And I'm actually quite shocked to see things that there's some of them are hearing for the first time. It's a different way of knowing, and it's a different knowledge set. And it really is a connection to people and to those relationships that are built between our environment and living human beings. So I think that's where the benefit comes in. It just enhances, it just makes for a deeper connection to the sciences and makes it more personal to you. So I think there's a benefit in that. And there's so many resources out there to be able to bring it in. So it's possible to do that.
For sure. And we have a lot of questions in the chat. How can we stay in touch with the work being done at Mystic Aquarium and Tamaquag Museum? We both have websites, so please just go on Google and look us up. My information I can throw in the chat, and feel free to reach out to me so I can connect everybody to everybody. And we're getting thank yous. I appreciate everybody on this panel so much. The work that we do is truly important to the young people and growing them. And I thank everybody for joining us today to listen to some of the things that we are doing together. I think that togetherness is a huge piece. That community connection is so important in doing conservation work and protecting our ocean. And so enjoy the rest of your time here at the CHOW week here, the summit, and thank you all. And thank you to my panel. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Kishkanash, everyone.
Tapatash.